Good afternoon, everyone. Heartily welcome to all participants for today's program in Rashtrobigyan Chorcha Kendra. I am happy to share that the most respectful and renowned educationalist, not only nationally but also internationally famous, Dr. K. Jai Prasad, has been joined with us. We are very much fortunate that Sir is going to give us his valuable and precious time from his earthy busy schedule. I am over to Payal and requesting for further continuation.
We are going to give you a brief introduction of Sir. Dr. K. Jayaprasad is a professor at the Department of International Relations, Central University of Kerala. He is also acting as the Finance Office and is member Executive Council, Central University of Kerala, Dean, School of Cultural Studies and Director, Mahatma Ayankali Center for Kerala Studies. Dr. K. Jayaprasad took his master's and doctoral degree in political science from University of Kerala. He started his career as a UGC Research Associate in the Department of Politics, University of Kerala in 1991. In 1994, he joined Sri Narayana College, Thiruvananthapuram as lecturer in political science. He served as the head of the Department of Politics, Sri Narayana College, Chertala, and became a reader in 2003 and associate professor in 2006 at Sri Narayana College, Kollam, under University of Kerala. With an academic career of 25 years, he has remarkable experience in the discipline of political science and international relations and is a recognized research guide in University of Kerala and Central University of Kerala. With 5 books authored, chapters in 13 edited volumes, both in English and Malayalam, and over 60 research articles, his contribution to the area of research is distinguishable. He is a popular figure in media, a communist, and an active participant of various debates and on-air discussions. His publications in various newspapers and journals would count up to a number of more than 400. He is the editor of the research journal Pragati and also the associate editor of South Asian Journal of Socio-Political Studies. His publications include areas related to education, international politics, human rights, state politics, and electoral politics. He is life member of various professional bodies like All India Political Association, treasurer of Association of Political Scientists, Kerala, and is the vice president of Bharatiya Vichara Kendram since 2013, where he served as general secretary thrice from 2004 to 2013. He was also involved with the governing body of State Resource Centre, Kerala. He served as a member board of Studies, Political Science, University of Kerala, and is a part of the Academic Council of Bharatiya Vichara Kendra Research Center, Thiruvananthapuram. He is an expert chairman of examination board of various universities. He is also associated with advisory council of numerous bodies. His research interests are nationalism, Indian constitution, national politics, and foreign policy. Professor Dr. K. Jayaprasad sir, thank you and namaskar for joining us. We welcome you to our platform. We request you to start today's seminar. Thank you.
Namaste. Good afternoon. Today, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for this program, and that too in a very relevant topic, contemporary relevant, not only relevant, it is very crucial to India. And from the southern part of India, in Kerala, I am talking to you, especially the West Bengal audience basically. And I am happy to initiate a discussion with regard to the India-China relation, revisiting India-China relations. As you are aware, the India-China relations, we have completed around 72 years of our bilateral relations with China. 72 years of bilateral relations. I put 72 years because the current China, not the traditional China or the China we have read in history. This is a different one. That is the People's Republic of China. That is was established in 1949 October onwards. And India is the first major democratic country which recognized the communist revolution under Mao Zedong and China. And after 2 decades, only after 2 decades, the USA recognized China. And also for a long period, the People's Republic of China were not allowed to enter into United Nations organization. And even today, you can see the nationalist China or the formerly the Taiwan. It is called Taiwan. And we are discussing the very important areas of our national life, because both India and China share such a large border of the entire northern part of the country, from starting from Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh. And we cannot, at the outset, I will say that we cannot compare from the point of view of power. We cannot compare India and China in an equal sense. China is comparatively, from the military point of view, it is very powerful, and as economically also it is very powerful, second largest economy. And India is not so bad, but we are also developing nations, and we are also in the third position, fourth largest economy in the world. And as far as the political systems are concerned, India is a democratic country with all fundamental freedoms and a multi-party parliamentary democratic system, a republic. And every 5 years there will be elections, and there are a large number of principal or states or federal units having administered by different political parties. Such an excellent, vibrant, very successful democracy we have. For the last 7 decades, India provided such an example of the great or largest democracy in the world. But China is, we have a different administration. It is a non-party rule state where you cannot find any political freedom. It is, even though it is the largest society, a single party rule, but now under the current president of China, Xi Jinping, it provides like an autocratic military state. One of the largest military states. I will say that China as a military state rather than a non-party ruled state, because you look at the Chinese system, People's Liberation Army, PLA plays the major role. You cannot compare India or even Russia or Britain or USA. There, normally in our discussion, we will not refer their military, but here the PLA is entirely different. It has the same status of a political party, or maybe a superior bureaucracy, superior power center, those who control PLA will control the government. Entirely different system, and hence the political system or political pattern we are following, we cannot compare the India and China. At the same time, what is the major similarity between India and China is that these two nations are the largest countries of the world, largest populated countries of the world. And these two nations together constitute more than 40% of the total world population. That is the relevance of these two nations. Hence, the relations between these two nations is much relevant, not only relevant to these two nations or the region, or it is relevant to the entire mankind, because the 40% of the entire mankind lives in two nations, but having two different political systems. One an autocratic, authoritarian, dictatorial, military state. Other is a peace-loving, one's a non-aligned, multi-party democratic states having all freedom and protect most of the almost all the human rights as provided by the international charter. But China has a different one. And hence the relationship between these two countries are very important. Hence we cannot, we should not be limited in a mere academic discussion only. And that is why I said that it is very relevant to the mankind also. And it seems that China is not interested in improving its bilateral or its relations with India. And also, China plays in a different manner. On the one hand, China plays through Pakistan. And I will say, at the outset, I will say that India has only one enemy country, that is China, not Pakistan. Pakistan is a tool of China, and hence I will say that Pakistan is not an enemy country, but it is the tool of our prime enemy, and China is the. And I am going through the entire history of 72 years of India-China relations, and starting from 1949 itself. And before discussing the India-China relations, or while we are discussing the India-China relations, we should first refer the letter written by the first Deputy Prime Minister of India, the Home Minister of India, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who wrote a long letter, maybe his last letter, to the Prime Minister of India, addressed to the Prime Minister of India. And he has narrated all these kind of issues in 1950, November 7th. It has been dated in 1950, November 7th. Unfortunately, that great son of India, Sardar Patel, died in 1950 December itself. But thereafter, you cannot find any different or dissent voice from the ruling circle up to 1962. But from the very beginning, the opposition parties alerted the government headed by the great Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, the architect of foreign policy of India, and he is considered as a great statesman. But the problem starts his analysis on the Chinese issue, and unfortunately, the issues or the problems or the concern raised by Sardar Patel was unheard. That is the major problem we are today facing. And if it is heard in good spirit, normally this discussion has no relevance. It will not be have no relevance because he has pointed out the future problems of India which we are going to face. From 1959 onwards, 1962 onwards in a particular sense, even before that, Sardar Patel concerns became true. And unfortunately, our foreign fathers of our foreign policy, especially Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister, and his colleagues, failed to understand the real threat we are going to face in future. And I would like to mention some of the major points in later by Sardar Patel. And before that, we should, while we are discussing India-China relations, we should also analyze the Chinese behavior or its relations with its neighbors, not only India, except 2-3 nations like Pakistan or North Korea. China has problem with almost all the neighbors. Maybe this is the one great country having such a large number of issues with almost all its neighbors. Not only its land neighbors in sea also, whether it is South China Sea or East China Sea, China has problems. And hence, while discussing these kind of issues, we cannot say India has alone the concern. The concern is with Japan, South Korea, then Philippines, Taiwan is there almost. Then almost all the ASEAN countries, including Asia countries of the Asia Pacific. And because China is not ready to accept international norms related with, especially in South China Sea, its attitude towards Vietnam, another great communist nation, which initially China supported. And China militarily attacked that country, not only India, they attacked Vietnam also. Hence, the Chinese history of the Chinese diplomacy may be a different one, and even in the 21st century, there was a belief that during my most of my life I have studied during the Cold War period. But after the Cold War, there was an impression that the world is moving towards economic progress. The political divide, the divide between two great superpowers was over with the Cold War, with the disintegration of the Soviet Union, but that was not happened. Gradually, China emerged, especially since 2012 onwards, under the current leadership, current president of China. It has a different voice, a different diplomatic voice there, and hence the concern is not with India. It is concern is with almost all the neighboring countries, and not only almost all the neighboring countries. The entire Asia Pacific nations are worried with the Chinese attitude towards its neighboring countries, not only neighboring countries to other countries. But with their peculiar diplomacy, debt-trapped diplomacy, most of the underdeveloped nations are now aligned with China, but it is a different one. And we cannot compare China with USA. Even though China is a superpower, we cannot compare it with the US, because US has a different history today. First of all, it is a democratic country, but China is not a democratic country, and it is a military state. And the ordinary citizens or ordinary people of the country have no role in the system of governance or to make opinion on these kind of issues. But USA has a different system, and their diplomatic history has a different history. We can see the difference between China and the USA. But anyway, China is a giant power, economic power, not only in the region, the entire world. And from the very beginning, as mentioned earlier, that on 1949 October onwards, India has initiated very cordial relation with China, and that is why I said the first democratic country which approved recognized the communist rule, and also voiced for China for a long period in UNO for its membership from the very beginning, such a friendly nation. And but later in 1954, India and China signed a trade treaty. Also, we endorsed the Chinese annexation of Tibet. That was another tragic history of this region. And such an appeasement policy followed by Jawaharlal Nehru towards China. And actually, before I am not going to give details with regard to the letter I mentioned by Sardar Patel, but some of the points should be noted while discussing India-China relations in 21st century. That is why I said the word is a prophetic letter, because it was written in 1950, but it is relevant today. And Sardar Patel stated that, why I have given such an importance to this letter, because all the issues what will be discussed today must be the result of the Nehruvian foreign policy or Nehruvian failure to understand China as with Patel. And see what Patel said in his letter. I will quote two sentences. Recent and bitter history also tell us that communism is no shield against imperialism, and that the communists are good or as bad imperialists as any other. Chinese ambition in this respect not only covered the Himalayan slopes in outside, but also include the important part of Assam. They have their ambitions in Burma also. Burma has the added difficulty as it has no McMahon line around which to build up even the semblance of an agreement. Chinese Iranicism and communist imperialism. See the word communist imperialism used by Sardar Patel as different from the expansionism or imperialism of the Western powers. Because we are all familiar with the Western imperialism. In our academic discussion also, even today we are discussing the Western imperialism, but we are not ready to discuss the Chinese imperialism, which the term was used by our first Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister, Sardar Patel. That is why I read this letter, because a large number of issues he has mentioned in the letter. He wanted the government, what is the relevance of Tibet in the history or in the future history of India? Because you see the last 5,000 of years of India-China relations. You cannot find a single incident of conflict, no incident of invasion. there is no conflict between India and China before 1949. But the entire history has been rewritten with the entry of the communist system or the People's Republic of China, and which rejected the entire history of thousands of years. And India never faced any invasion from Himalayas. India faced invasion from the western side and also from the northwestern side. See whether it is the Arabs, whether the Turks or the Mongolians, whatever may be, or finally the Europeans or British, all the invasions came from the western side or northwestern side. And we are 100% safe because of this Himalayas and peace-loving Tibetan people. Thousands of years we felt the safety of Himalayas, but now the northern border is the major problem to the country, and the major problem because the border line between India and China is not recognized by China. We have no problem, and we are ready to accept the McMahon line, but China is not ready. And China is also, even today, even recently, 1 year back, China officially rejected the formation of Ladakh Union Territory, the decision of central government to revoke the Article 370 and the formation of two union territories, including Ladakh and Jammu Kashmir, but China rejected it. And not only that, even today, you see, Arunachal Pradesh is considered, China is considering Arunachal Pradesh as its territory. And no Indians living in Arunachal Pradesh will get a Chinese visa. Still they are providing the stamped visa. And thus they are insulting the unity and integrity of the country. Besides their attack recently in Galwan and Doklam standoff, and now the military build-up into the entire northern border, especially now the recent build-up in the Arunachal Pradesh border, besides the other parts of the northern part of the country. And along with that, the Pak-occupied Kashmir, through the Pak-occupied Kashmir, China has already occupied a large portion of the Pak-occupied Kashmir, and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, formerly the Karakoram Highway, it is built through that land of India. And even the Belt and Road Initiative, it is working with the occupied land of India, and thus it creates the threat to the nation, threat to the national border, northern border. Not only the threat to the northern border, it is regularly interfering the internal matters of the country. Internal matters of the country, I will say that even recently, they have protested whenever our Prime Minister, any minister or any constitutional head, Prime Minister or Vice President or Vice President, visited Arunachal Pradesh, immediately the Chinese government officially protest. They will immediately inform their protest to the government. In that sense, they are regularly interfering our internal matters of the country. But we are not officially. India never interfered into the internal matters of the country, even though such a huge human rights violations are happening in Tibet and Xinjiang and then Hong Kong, and around, as per the records, around more than 15 lakhs Tibetans were killed in Tibet for the last 6 to 7 decades. And also in Xinjiang, there are a large number of human rights violations are coming. and the entire Muslim community, the minority communities, they were they have a different term for of their human rights violations, re-education camps. They will say that re-education camps, but we are not ready to condemn that kind of human rights violation in the country. Not only the formally the government, not only the government, even the civil society in India is not ready to take up these kind of issues. You look at the daily television debates, most of the news channels are not ready to take these kind of issues. Only rarely they will take these issues, because such a pro-Chinese approach has been taken by our media. And also the politics of India we followed also having such an approach. We are critical to the American intervention. We are critical of many other interventions of Russia, many other countries, but we are not critical. And an ordinary citizen of India has no such knowledge of what China is, what are the problems they are going to provide to future India. And then that is why we should have a clear understanding of India-China relations. And these kind of issues are not history, and these are even today we are facing the same problem. As I told you, in 1954, China annexed Tibet by 1950 October itself. Informally, the PLA entered into Tibet and they have captured it. But in 1954, formally India recognized the Chinese right of suzerainty over Tibet. Chinese suzerainty over Tibet, and officially in the modern period. Do you believe that the word suzerainty, can you use the word suzerainty? It is a feudal concept, but unfortunately Indian government endorsed that concept, and we have given it, because it was with the British government since 1914 onwards, and after independence the same power was handed over to the independent India. But the Tibetan people, they believed in India. And that is why after the Second World War and after the independence of the country, and the Tibetan people, even you look in 1947, the Tibetan delegation to the foreign countries, they have used their own passport. And throughout the history, never Tibet was a province of China, especially up to 18th century. After 18th century, maybe after 1700 onwards, China dominated the Tibetan province sometimes. And during the entire 19th century, you can see there, even last part of the second part of the 19th century, China has no control over the Tibet. And later, once the European powers entered into this region, and also India was under the British, and China has no role in Tibet. And after the Second World War, and the British left India, and gradually China claimed for Tibet, but unfortunately India stood with China against the Tibet, and India never supported Tibetan independence, because at that time there was a feeling in India that if Tibet remained an independent country, in future it should be a center for Anglo-American imperialist forces. And this was the idea proposed by the Indian ambassador K.M. Panikkar. And he was in favor of China. And the role of K.M. Panikkar was questioned by Sardar Patel, the Deputy Prime Minister, questioned by the loyalty of Sardar K.M. Panikkar, who was the first ambassador of India, he was a Malayali, and he stood with China, and he justified China, and that has been questioned by Sardar Patel in 1950. But his views were followed. Later also, many of the ambassadors to China were from Kerala. Many Malayalis were worked in ambassador of China, and maybe a different issue, I don't know. But anyway, the government believed that some kind of appeasement policy they followed, and as a result, the Indian government has taken a different stand that Tibet should be controlled by China, and it should not be given independence. But the problem, normally, the Nehruvian belief was that the issue of India-China will be over. China will be Hindi Chini Bhai will work. China will emerge as a great friend of India. But unfortunately, in my view, the problem begins with the annexation of China. The problem begins with the 1954 India-China trade agreement, including the signing of Panchasheel. That is, there the problem begins. There we stood with an imperialist power, and as a result, a peace-loving, maybe a traditional society, they have their own system of governance. They lost their existence. Lakhs of people became refugees of, and lakhs of people are even today, they are refugees living in India and in many other parts of the world, and also they have a government in exile, but we are not ready to accept that government in exile officially, but they have some social support from India. And while discussing India-China border issues, we cannot avoid these kind of issues, because suppose Tibet remained as a buffer state between India and China, there will be no direct border between India and China. Starting from Assam, Arunachal Pradesh to Kashmir, there will be no physical border between India and China if Tibet remained independent. This issue was raised by Sardar Patel. Not only Tibet, we need the independence of Tibet, the independence of Nepal, independence of Bhutan, and also Myanmar also. He mentioned the Myanmar. Sikkim formally later joined with India. But at that time, Sikkim was a different one. So that not only the freedom of the Tibetans, the freedom of the Tibetans is as important as the Nepalese or Bhutanese or the people of Sikkim or Myanmar. Because China has claimed not only the Tibet, that is the problem. Chinese claim is not limited with the Tibet. Its claim limited with the other states like Bhutan, Nepal, and Sikkim, and a large portion of India, including in Assam and Jammu Kashmir. And in 1949, once the People's Republic of China came, they have followed the imperialist policy, which has been followed by the Stalin. And Stalin annexed such a large number of neighboring countries to Russia, and thus the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic was formed. And fortunately, in 1991, all the 15 countries annexed by Stalin with the iron hand has lost, and they became independent. Thus, the 15 independent nations emerged along with Russia today with the disintegration of the Soviet Union. But the same policy was taken by Mao, and as a follower of Stalin's same policy, he immediately annexed the Inner Mongolia and then the large country, Republic, Islamic Republic of India or East Turkmenistan, and later the Tibet. You look at the modern map of China, around 2/3 of its land belongs to Inner Mongolia, then Xinjiang and Tibet. But 90% of the population are living in the mainland China. That is why China is much worried with our Arunachal Pradesh, because Arunachal Pradesh has very close proximity with the mainland China, not like the western, northern, other part of the border, that is Kashmir or Himachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is very close to the mainland China, where around 90% of its population reside. That is why they are much worried with Arunachal strategically, or from the point of view of security, because we have such a close, we can enter in Indian rocket or missile can easily enter into the mainland of China. Otherwise, they are safe. They are such a vast country. Even after annexing Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia, they are not happy with their borders. They are afraid of their borders, and that is why they have a problem with almost all its neighboring countries, including its initiatives in South China Sea. And while discussing the India-China relations, I have given much importance to the issue of Tibet, because the India-China relations became worsened only because of the Tibetan annexation and the approval of India through India-China Trade Agreement of 1954, including the Panchashil. And Panchashil, immediately China has rejected Panchashil from the very beginning. And even today, India is following the Panchashil. That is the major problem while discussing India and China. Initially, I told you that China is ready to interfere in India, and they are interfering in India regularly through Pakistan, then through a large number of insurgency groups, especially a large number of insurgency groups in the northeast. Even in the last day, we faced again, after a gap, there was a terrorist attack in that region. And China gave all kind of support to various insurgency groups, including Maoist groups. And because these groups they have plenty of modern weapons because of this China, and also the terrorist groups for liberating or creating problem in Kashmir. And China always stood with the terrorist groups or terrorist support of the terrorists. Even in UN, they are not ready to recognize the internationally declared terrorist groups as naming as terrorists. Only recently they have accepted. And such a country, that kind of issues they have problems they are creating. Not only creating border disturbances. I have told you that in Doglam recently, what we have seen, the Chinese attitude in Doglam, and in Galwan, we lost more than 20 great soldiers, and the role of PLA in the entire northern border, and also the Chinese propaganda. I am regularly following the Chinese official English TV and also their Global Times newspaper also, and they are regularly writing against India, and also because they are considered the Dalai Lama clique, in that they are using that phrase. Dalai Lama has been given refugee status by India, and he's staying here. And why the Tibetan issue became more relevant today, because now there are discussions going on who will lead, that is the spiritual leadership of the Tibetan population, especially the Tibetan government in exile, and also lakhs of Tibetan refugees all over the world. Who will be the after Dalai Lama? Dalai Lama is very old. Who will control? Who will lead the Tibetans after Dalai Lama? China is looking for that, and because already China has declared that after Dalai Lama, they will decide who will be the spiritual head of the Tibetans, and that kind of issues are going in coming days. You are going to see these kind of issues, and definitely I am. While discussing the India-China relations of 72 years, there are a large number of issues to be mentioned, but because of time, want of time, I am limiting some of the major problems, because you are also familiar with the developments happened after 1962 treacherous military attack by China on India. And after 62, our diplomatic relations came to an end. Later, after 1.5 decades, we started our diplomatic relations by 1976 onwards. And thereafter, our relations improved to an extent. But there was no people-to-people relations. But government-to-government level relations were improved after 1980, especially after the death of Mao Zedong, and under the Deng Xiaoping, and because Chinese leadership has taken a different approach during Deng leadership, because they are worried with their home building, their economic development, because Mao Zedong has, maybe in history they will call him as a great leader, but under his rule, whether it is under a great leap forward or during the cultural revolution, crores of more than 4 crore population, 4 crore mean 400 lakhs, more than 400 lakhs population lost their life in the People's Republic of China. But Deng has started with a different objective, and along with their military build-up, he focused much on market economy, rejected the communist ideology and entered into market economy. At the same time, for the governance, they have taken the communism. China thus has a different, unique system of governance. For the party alone, they have maintained the communism, but in their principles, they have 100% rejected the communist ideology, and they have entered into the market economy. And as a result, within 2-3 decades, China became a great economic power. And with the dawn of the 21st century, and with the end of the Soviet era, China got a new space in the world politics. But China never acted as a champion of world politics. But gradually, China entered a new methodology of diplomacy and international relations, and gradually, one by one, China made economic alliances, but maybe we can put it as a debt trap diplomacy. Through that debt trap diplomacy, China succeeded in getting a large number of underdeveloped nations of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. and even the European Union has recognized the Chinese role. And as a result, within 2 decades of the 21st century, China has emerged as the second largest economy and also became the great champion of or the great power which challenged the hegemony of USA after the end of Cold War. And during the Cold War, there was a bipolarity was there. There was Soviet Union was there to challenge the American hegemony. But later, China emerged as a major power. But even today, Chinese focus is much on economics, not on military. To the world politics, as far as while we are discussing the world politics, China is preferring or supporting a large number of countries, not with a strategic partnership, but with an economic relations. They want to support their economy. In that sense, they have developed that kind of relations with the third world country. That is the peculiar foreign policy followed by the post-Deng China. And even today, later what happened under the current leadership now, a dictatorial model has emerged. And the last Communist Party has already declared the current president, Xi Jinping, as a life, the entire authority has been given to one man, and so that we can expect that kind of leadership in China. Maybe a dictator like Hitler is emerging in our neighbor. And in the current position, I am not. There are a large number of issues to be discussed while discussing India-China relations, because all these are very relevant in this relation. And I would like to finish some of the contemporary issues before ending my talk. I would like to note some of the major issues of the current day India-China relations. And and now the major problem we are going to face, or if we are, whether we are discussing the bilateral issue of India and China, here we should remember that the issues of India, the problems of India, while discussing the India-China relations, it is important that the issues of India are not limited to India. Same kind of issues are with the most of the neighbors of China. That is the major point to be noted. The major, almost all the neighbors are afraid of this kind of Chinese imperialistic or Chinese hegemony, that kind of military diplomacy. Most of the countries are afraid of that. And fortunately, China has taken Pakistan and to an extent now Nepal, Myanmar, and North Korea. Only few countries have comparatively good relations, but all others, whether it's all starting from Japan, all the Asia Pacific nations are afraid. Now, Australia also came forward against the Chinese imperialistic ambitions in this region. And hence, while discussing India-China relations, we cannot limit our discussion with bilateral issues. And hence, we should rethink of our approach towards China. And at the same time, you must aware that our economic relations, especially, it was much benefited by China. See, last 2-3 decades of our economic relations. Now more than $86 billion trade is going on between those two nations, and such a great trade imbalance we have. And China is the major beneficiary of this trade relations, not India. And this is the major issue, how we tackle the problem with the India tomorrow, today or tomorrow we are going, how to contain China. Whether we are capable to contain China, or whether we are aware of Chinese threat, that is the major problem. I feel that a large number of Indians or large number of Indian population are not aware of Chinese threat. It is the major problem of India, and if we compare India with China. At the same time, if you follow the Global Times or Chinese official media, an ordinary Chinese citizen is aware of Indian threat, because they consider India as a potential threat, because India has given the Dalai Lama clique, that is the Tibetan divisive forces of politics, a home. We have given a place, and they have given a better position in the world because of the Indian support. And that is why they are worried with India, because India as a democratic country, having such a wider canvas, and we have the capacity to accommodate all the views. China cannot agree with that kind of democratic India, and that is why. But at the same time, the ordinary citizen of India is not aware of this kind of threat, from whether it is from China or from Pakistan. Even we, to an extent, we are aware of Pakistan, but unfortunately not by China. And hence, this kind of a discussion must be there to create public opinion against the threat what we are facing from China, and what we are going to face from China in future. And India is such a great country, having its civilizational entity, and China is a great country having its civilizational entity, which lost in 1959, and they have a new civilization, a communist imperialist civilization. That is the major problem we are facing. But we are, the traditional India has this kind of, because our thinking is entirely different from the Chinese people. And then even you look at the Chinese history, only maybe on few occasions, China allowed its citizen to make protest against a particular issue, that against India. In 1967, you can see in the Google, you can see that such a huge demonstrations were held against India in all over China. Not only that, Indian embassy was attacked by Chinese people. Do you believe that under PLA, such a military state, the ordinary citizen can assemble and they can make slogans against a neighboring country? Do you believe that it is possible without the support of the government? It is clear that it is a state-sponsored popular protest. And China, because China need that kind of nationalistic fervor among its citizens, and they always create India in an enemy status. But India never used that kind. Even after, you see, after 1962 Chinese attack, there was no such a serious demonstrations in India against China. Even today, you cannot find any much kind of protest. Even after Galwan, and there was some kind of protest against the Chinese goods for a short period, and the India government banned around 59 apps. But there end the popular protests against the China. And because we are a democratic country, we are worried with our day-to-day politics and the electoral victory. Most of the ordinary people are not worried with this kind of national issues, especially from our border issues. Even in academics, you cannot find much seminars related with this kind of issues. Because I am currently I am the president of Indian Political Science Association. From 2018 onwards, national president of Indian Political Science Association. Before that, I was the vice president. But I know the most of the seminars and discussions going on in our universities. And I was formerly acted as a pro vice chancellor of Central University of Kerala, and I participated in many national seminars in many universities. And there are a large number of seminars related with India-US relations, India-Russia relations, India-France, India-Britain, India-Sri Lanka, India-Pakistan, but you cannot find that number of discussion or debates on China in academic circle. And that is the peculiar feature of Indian academics, that there was no such a discussion is going on the real issues of India-China relations. What are the major threats we are today facing? And such a trade imbalance we are managing India-China trade relations. And China is the major beneficiary there. I think that the government has many limitations, but as the society can react against China by boycotting the Chinese products. And I think that that kind of movement should come in India, not from the government side, from the society, because otherwise China will dominate the Indian market if the present system continues. That is one of the major problems. And also we have to discuss, and my view is that there should be discussion how to contain China. It is a major problem. It is a major threat to the region. It is a major threat to the mankind, because China is not run by a democratic governance system. It is now dominated by an autocratic or dictatorial military system, and it will be a threat to the region. And most of the neighboring nations are aware of that, and hence India cannot continue with non-aligned foreign policy to contain China, because their need alliance, their need strategic partnership. Now, to an extent, the Indian leadership after 2014, Indian political leadership is aware of the Chinese threat. That I am happy that after 2014, the government of India is more aware of the threat from China, not only the current, in future also. And as a result, our strategic relations has improved with the democratic world, including USA, Japan, Australia, and including the quadrilateral security dialogue, the Quad. You cannot say it is an alliance. That kind of movement, now we are much engaged, and that kind of initiative must be there. And we have to protect this nation. We have to protect 130 crore population from the Chinese attack. Because as a student of political science, I thought that India-China military conflict, maybe the 1962 military conflict might be the last one. But when the Doglam issue came, I was much surprised, because I am taking the PG program of China in world politics, and hence regularly I am dealing with this kind of issues. But I am surprised with the Doglam standoff, and because China is such a great country, and in 1962 China was not even recognized by USA, and China was not a member of UN system. But at that time, China has a different perception. The world community or the democratic world have a different perception on China in 1962. But the current China has a different one. The European Union has very good relation. America also has comparatively very good relation. And Chinese economy, Chinese products control dominate markets of the world, all over the world, including USA. And in that and the Cold War like scenario is not there. And the world, I thought that the world was only threatened by the Islamic terrorist forces, except that there was no such a serious issue all over the world, because with the end of Cold War and the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the world must be entering into a new international era, international politics. But unfortunately, China gradually proved that China remained as from the very beginning, that is, as in 1962, there was no change of the Chinese attitude towards India. Whatever may be the appeasement policies followed by India or Indian politicians or Indian media, the China is the same as in 1962. That proved in Doklam. But I am much surprised with the Galwan. Galwan, we lost our military people, but never we expected. No military expert believed that there will be casualty in the northern border. We are expecting in western border along with the Pakistan border, okay, but we are familiar with that. But we never expected such a military casualty under PLA, because we believed that there was a belief that because Narendra Modi government has taken a large number of initiatives for a better relation, personal relation with the current president. He has many summits, and in 2019, there was the last summit was held in Mahabalipuram in Chennai. The leadership of Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping met, because why they have taken the Mahabalipuram, because remembering the historical ties between these two nations, because Chinese soft power is such a plays major role, and we recognize the Chinese soft power, and that is why the Narendra Modi decided to meet the Chinese president, welcome the Chinese president in the historical city of Chennai, that where the Mahabalipuram is, because traditionally we have such a great history of relations, but unfortunately the treacherous policy of China, as happened in 1962, was later repeated in Galwan. Thus we lost our great soldiers. And hence I believe that China is same as in 1962. Even the change in international politics, even in changing international trade, international multilateral relations, and new emergence of new multilateral bodies, Chinese diplomatic style remained as in 1962, and it is more worried with India. In future also, India is going to face a large number of problems from the northern border and along with the western border. Already I termed that the rule of China is working in the western border and through various terrorist forces in Kashmir and other parts of the country, including northeast, besides the Maoist groups. And hence we should discuss, the society should discuss these kind of issues, and how we contain China. And even today, our market is dominated by the Chinese good. Whether it will help the Indian interest or the Chinese interest. And on the one side, China is creating such a great problem in the border, and we are using the same products of that country. Is it possible to any other country? I think that whether if Japan never take that kind of goods from the enemy country. They are such a nationalistic people, but in India, unfortunately, it's not happening. And anyway, the society must look into these kind of issues. How can we control the Chinese economic influence in India, especially their trading in the West? And it is not the duty of the government, but the society can reject the Chinese trade, Chinese goods in the country, and also. This is a major one of the issue I would like to highlight. And also, we should have entered into strategic partnership alliances with the democratic world, including USA, and already we have improved our relations with most of the neighboring countries of China, and including ASEAN, and Australia, and Japan, and including Germany, Britain, and many other democratic countries. The government, fortunately, the government is aware of this kind of issues, and we should there should be more engagement with the G7 nations, because for the first time, the G7 nations have questioned the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and to an extent, they have questioned the last summit. They have questioned the Chinese debt trap diplomacy. And they are thinking how to counter the Chinese debt trap diplomacy, and that kind of discussions are going on. And also the Chinese engagement in Indian Ocean, the string of pearls. There are many mechanisms developed by the current government under Narendra Modi to face the Chinese threat in the Indian Ocean, but we need more and more engagement in the Indian, not only in the Ocean and in the Asia Pacific. And we should be more active, especially our activist policy must be more active, and we should engage with the Southeast Asian nations, and we should engage with the South China Sea, the interest of the democratic world in the South China Sea, including Vietnam. Not only the Vietnam, because China must accept international norms on tea, especially the maritime trade, and that in the South China Sea we should take a clear stand against China, and also Asia Pacific. I would like to mention one point that the People's Republic of China should learn a lesson from Japan. What happened to Japan hegemonic ambitions? After the First World War, Japan became the champion of Asia Pacific, and later they entered in the Second World War. They became a great partner of the Second World War, and their hegemonic ambitions were such a great one, but later it collapsed with Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That kind of lesson should learn from Japan by China. China is going to that kind of hegemonic approach in this region, especially in Asia Pacific region. And also recently, China is worried with the democratic world interference in Asia Pacific, especially by Germany, France, Britain, Australia, and Japan and USA. And India should play a major role with these nations, and a non-alignment definitely will not help the future existence of the country. It damaged our it damaged our existence, and only because of that, even today we have no marked borders in North and in Kashmir, mainly because we followed that kind of policy. And that is why I have noted Sardar Patel letter and his concerns and his initiative, but unfortunately that was not taken by the government up to 2014. But in 1998, under the leadership of Vajpayee, for the first time, the Indian government declared its nuclear capabilities, and we have declared that we are a nuclear weapon state, declared a nuclear weapon state in spite of all kind of opposition from the global powers. We declare as a nation a nuclear weapon state, which has been questioned. But fortunately, the government of India officially wrote to the great powers that mentioning China, that because why India became a nuclear power. There is a letter written by the Defense Minister George Fernandez to the P4 nations, especially USA, and stating that China is the major threat because India is faced by an aggressive nuclear weapon state, so that we cannot follow a policy of non-nuclear policy. We cannot follow a non-nuclear weapon policy. As a result, we rejected the nuclear, that kind of international agreements, and we are not signed the non-proliferation treaty because our neighbor, aggressive neighbor we have, because we faced a treacherous attack from that neighbor and also a nuclear power nation, and hence we need nuclear capability for the first time. As a result, for the first time, India asserted that India need power against China. That is why we have converted into a nuclear weapon state, and it is officially India recorded. And we have wrote a letter to the President of USA that why we have this is there is no need of any justification. Anyway, the government justified that why we became a nuclear weapon state, because our neighbor is such an aggressive, treacherous country, and having such a nuclear weapon, and as a result, we declared nuclear weapon state. And you can see that after that, especially during 2004 to 2014, around 10 years, there was no such a serious that kind of words from the government. But fortunately, the same government has entered into nuclear agreement with the USA, and we have entered into strategic partnership alliances with some of the nations, including ASEAN, and these are the great things happened during that period. But from during the Narendra Modi under the government, from the very beginning, he has taken much initiative to have a better relation with China. But all of his personal initiatives, especially whether it is in Shanghai Cooperation Organization or BRICS or in other multilateral forums, he tried his best to have a better relations and a personal relation with the Chinese leadership, especially under the current president. But what happened as in 1962, China entered into the Indian territory and they attacked, militarily attacked, we lost our soldiers. And that is why we should re-look into our perception on China. The threat perception must be really, we must discuss that kind of issue with all angles. And we should, the ordinary citizen of India should aware of the hegemonic ambitions of the communist world or the Chinese leadership, which has mentioned, as mentioned in the letter of Sardar Patel. It is very relevant in 2021, this November 15. It is relevant as written in November 7th of 1950. It is relevant this November 2021. And hence, I would like to say that the society must be more aware of these kind of issues. and and also we should support the human rights movements, or at least we should condemn. I am not saying that the government may be limited, but the Indian society must condemn the human rights violations happening in China, especially in Xinjiang and Tibet and Hong Kong, and their threat to Taiwan. And also we should reconsider our own China policy, and what should be our approach towards Taiwan. Whether we can afford that Taiwan should be a part of PRC. I will say that we should reconsider, the government should reconsider its approach, but there may be limitations. I know the diplomatic limitations, but the society and the government should allow the people-to-people relations with such an economic power, Taiwan, and we should, and also the Hong Kong. There, the non-governmental organization, political parties, academics, universities have a major role to discuss these kind of issues. And we are many times we discussed in Kerala, we discussed the issues of the Palestinians. Genuine issues, Palestinian issues are genuine, but why I never found any discussion of Xinjiang, because already millions of people lost their lives. All are Muslim population, and their religious freedom is totally rejected by China. And you should go through the reports available of the Xinjiang and also the Tibet, very peace-loving people. And hence, the Indian society, Indian political parties, Indian newspapers and media, also Indian academics and universities should raise these kind of issues. Now we are raising these kind of issues in some parts of the world, but not all parts of the world. That is the peculiar feature of the Indian academics and media. And along with the Palestinian issue, we should discuss Xinjiang. Along with the Palestinian issue, we should discuss with the Tibetans. And along with the human rights violation, whether it is the minorities, whether it is blacks, whether it is Dalits, the human rights violations of Tibetans also must be addressed. There are lakhs of Tibetan people surviving here. Around more than 60 years they are residing as refugees in India. But we should discuss their issues also. And hence, I think that to contain communism, there must be more and more debates and discussions from the popular platform, not from the government side. And there must be an offensive line. Offensive line must be, government should also compelled to take offensive line in our northern border. There is no scope for peaceful resolution of India-China border. The state should be more vigilant in its northern border, and in the coming days, because since a dictatorship has assumed the Chinese leadership, maybe definitely to survive the dictatorship, definitely the enemies, neighboring countries, they should take the neighboring countries as enemies. Otherwise, they cannot survive. The Hitler followed the same policy, and we are going to face that kind of issues. And they have given a special status to the current president, and it will also create the problem. To normalize India-China relations, I think that there will be a large number of real issues. Hence, we should discuss the problem with objective considerations, not with idealistic considerations. India-China and how we revisit the India-China relations, we should discuss the issue with objective considerations, and it must be a realistic one. And the idealism which followed by the first Prime Minister of India and the great statesman and the father of Indian foreign policy failed because of its because it was not objective one. And hence, we should learn from the history. We should learn from our forefathers. We should learn from the great leaders like Sardar Patel. He has written such a prophetic letter. It is for the future of India in 2021. Remembering Sardar Patel letter, I would like to conclude this discussion, and I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And I am ready to, if your program is allowed, I am ready to make any clarification. Otherwise, I again thank you for initiating this kind of discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Sir, some question in chat box.
Sir, we have 3 questions. Questions from Tripura University, Arijit Chakraborty. Is Chinese hegemony will be helpful for India to establish a strong foreign legacy towards the country for South China Sea? Sir, may I repeat?
Yes, in Chinese hegemony will be helpful for India to establish a strong foreign legacy towards the countries of South China. Definitely, but the problem that all the South China Sea, the neighboring countries of South China Sea and ASEAN countries, all are small nations compared with China. Such a mighty, they cannot challenge the mighty power of China. That is one of the major limitations. But India is aware of that now. India has a strategic partnership with ASEAN as well as Vietnam. To an extent, Indonesia, we have a maritime, very close relations. We have partnership, and also we have entered into Japan as well as Australia. And anyway, we should strengthen the ASEAN nations with the moral support, not only moral support, with the physical support. Because we are a great country having such a civilizational entity, we should stand with these societies. And there are maybe limitations. Individually, these nations have limitations. But a global combination, as now that kind of voices are now emerging, they will definitely they will check the Chinese hegemony. But in future, I think that India also should join with that international democratic forum. And I think that we were compelled to join with that forum. And hence, on the one side, we should stand with that. That is why I told you that we should be more, given more importance given to the activist policy and our support to the ASEAN neighbors, including issues related with the South China. It is not only the concern of India, it is the concern of the most of the nations of the ASEAN states. Not only that, the entire Asia Pacific is worried with that kind of behavior of China. Okay.
One more question from Arijit Chakraborty. In present context, Russian foreign policy becoming more favored toward China. Is this situation will be more challenging for India in Asian geostrategical scenario?
And this is a very relevant question, but the problem that you must see the bilateral relation between China and Russia. At that time, it was USSR. And such a hostile relation they have from 1954 onwards, after the death of Stalin, the Chinese Communist Party has totally rejected the leadership of the Soviet Communist Party and the Soviet leadership, and such a hostile situation emerged between China and Russia, and especially starting from 1956 to around 1980. But after then came, and also you can see that in Russia also, Gorbachev, during the leadership of the last president of USSR, they have changed their policy. Thereafter, China-Russia relationship, and hence I think that the relationship between, whatever may be the relationship emerging between Russia and China, we cannot say it will be a good or a comparatively such a all-weather friendship. But it has its own limitations, because there will be some mistrust between these two nations, because their history is different. And Russia cannot totally endorse the Chinese policy. The problem of the current Russia is that it have to tackle or it have to counter the American interests. So that during the Cold War period, after 70s, China have developed a good relation with America against Russia. At that time, USA supported China against Russia, because United States believed that China is good for countering Russia. So that around after 70s, USA has very good relation with China. But later, the disintegration of the Soviet Union and under the leadership of Putin, they have to stand with the USA. That is why they are looking China, and I think that their friendship has many limitations. Hence, India should use that limitations, because India must have a good relation with Russia, and not only that, India have a good relation in future also. Whatever may be our improvement relation with the other Western powers, including USA, India must have a very good relation with Russia, so that Russian Chinese combination alliance will not be against India, and we should take care for the maintaining the Russian relationship. And I am not afraid of that Russia-China relations, because I know the history of Russia and China, and Russia never believes China. But for the international politics, you cannot say a permanent friend or a permanent enemy, but they have comparatively better relations, mainly because of USA. But at the same time, Russia has many limitations on Chinese interests, because China is going to replace the former USSR role in international politics, and Russia will not allow that kind of Chinese hegemony, even though there is a comparatively good relation today. And hence, strategically, India should take a different approach on Russia and the USA, and even today we are following, and India rejecting the US interest. India entered into many agreements with the current government. Even today, the missile system is coming, which China, Russia, USA is going to strongly oppose. But at the same time, USA know the real threat of China, and hence in Russia-China improved relations will not be against India. That is my view, and but India should take care of that relation, their relations. Okay.
Sir, question from Manobesh Roy. Sir, India opposed China OBOR initiative as the China. Why? Please explain, sir.
Belt and Road Initiative, and it is the China-Pakistan economic corridor is part of Belt and Road Initiative. It challenges the sovereignty of India. You can see the Indian map, the real Indian map, not the official map. I think that since if I came with the PowerPoint, I can project that kind of map. A large portion of Kashmir is with the Pakistan, Pak-occupied Kashmir. From Pak-occupied Kashmir, Pakistan has ceded around more than 5,000 square kilometers of land to China in 1963. And later the Karakoram Pass highway emerged. Now this economic corridor, Belt and Road Initiative, act as the China-Pakistan economic corridor through up to Balochistan to Qatar port. And we cannot endorse the Belt and Road Initiative. It questions the sovereignty and integrity of the country. If you look at the Indian official map, you can see that. Then look at the Belt and Road Initiative. The corridor is going through the Indian land, that is in Kashmir. And technically, we can say through Pak-occupied Kashmir. And hence, we cannot agree, we cannot support that Belt and Road Initiative. And also, now the entire world is looking the Belt and Road Initiative with the suspicion, started to look. In last G7 summit, for the first time, they have made their concern on Belt and Road Initiative because of the now they are aware of the Chinese hidden agenda, the debt trap diplomacy. That is why they have decided to propose an alternative mechanism to support the third world countries. But it will take time. Anyway, Belt and Road Initiative will be questioned by more nations in future. From the very beginning, India was against it mainly because if you accept, technically you cannot accept because the corridor goes through the Indian land. Officially, it goes to the Indian land. Technically, maybe it is Pak-occupied Kashmir. That is the major reason.
Thank you so much, sir, for this informative session. You made this topic too easy for us, and also thank you for this clean presentation. Thank you for giving us time from your busy schedule. In future, we hope you will be with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all viewers and members. Thank you.
Thank you.